Hi there, it's Tim from Signage Live, and welcome to another episode of Digital Signage Explored. This one is slightly unusual compared to the ones we've done before. You might notice we're in a different studio. We're actually live at ISE 2024 at Midwich booth doing this live recording. With me, we have Lorna and Jeremy from ScreenFeed. Thank you very much for joining me.
Good to
Thanks
be
for having
here.
us.
This is like crazy, right? First of all, let's address the elephant in the room. This studio setup is like next level to anything we've done before, and it's given me about 1,000 ideas. You guys have traveled from?
Minnesota.
How's your
United
journey
States.
been?
Good, great.
Cool. Today we're going to talk about content. So do you want to do a bit of a kind of 30-second overview of ScreenFeed so we can get a bit of an understanding of why you guys are here to talk about content?
Sure. Yeah. Well, ScreenFeed's been in the digital signage content business since 2008. So we've had a lot of successes and failures, seen a lot of what customers do well, maybe what they're challenged with. Specifically, ScreenFeed, we offer data-driven content. So one side of our business is news, weather, local community events, flight information, a lot of syndicated or aggregated data. And then we have a tool called Connect that helps you display your own data and use that to generate dynamic graphics or HTML that could be scheduled into software such as Signage Live.
Perfect. Thank you. I think so we're talking about content, and then with ScreenFeed, I think there's a real benefit of being able to talk about that because you guys see a lot of content. Like out in the wilderness, people might come to you and say, this is what we had before. How can we improve this? And you've seen that in the real life. I've seen a couple of examples as well, which have maybe not been great. We actually had a conversation just as we were walking over here of what is successful content, and is it attractive content, or is it stuff that gets the message across? Have you got any kind of experience, individual pieces of content you've seen in the past and gone, oh, that was done really well, or we've never seen something like that, or taken some advice from other people?
Yeah. I think it's a good combination of both where it's communicating a message that's important, but it's also looking really nice. So we talked about this on the way here, like you mentioned, where it can look ugly, and that's fine. I guess if it's getting the message across, that is doing its job.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if it looks really appealing and someone's going to maybe pay attention to it for a few more seconds than they would have otherwise. One of our favorite recent examples that you and I covered was Flight Center. It's a travel, group in the UK, and they had this beautiful new office and wanted to have content to match. And they wanted to also show appreciation to their employees.
Yep.
So they're having the date that the employees started along with this really nice layout, and it's celebrating like, hey, they started 10 years ago or they started 5 years ago, and we appreciate you for that. And they're also showing the times where the transit's coming so they can go home and catch a bus or catch a train, and that's going to be helpful for the employees that are leaving. So it's doing its job, and it's enhancing the space, and it's making people feel appreciated when they come into this space, and that's a huge value add. So that was one of my favorite examples of successful content.
Well, it's nice when we get to have a case study between both of us,
Yeah.
because it really does show where the sticking point is, I think, when people are doing this research, because there's lots of resellers out there who can help with, I'll get you a screen, I'll get you the mess, I'll get that all installed. But after that, there's the level of, now what? And who looks after that? And unless you've got in-house content creators who are probably already stacked with a ton of work, because in-house content creators just don't sit still for very long. But we have a few internally that just they're always doing something. So taking data and things like that, like being able to integrate that tends to alleviate some of that stress, right? Just to mean that, the next day it's new content, it's fresh, and it
Right.
keeps people engaged.
Yeah.
Have you found that Flight Center is a good example. Is there any other customers where they've come to you and said, we just cannot keep up with making this look attractive continuously or keep it engaging continuously? Do you feel like that's a problem that they come across?
Yeah, I think early on when we started the company, the digital signage industry was newer. It's been around on the forums for many years, but we were early on in the industry in 2008, and a lot of times people would subscribe to our content, maybe not with a great reason, other than, I don't know what to put on my screen, so I need something. They've evolved, they've gotten smarter.
Yeah.
They still use our content. They may use other content for this purpose, which is to keep the screens fresh. And so, particularly in employee communications or other venues that people return to often,
Yeah.
if the content doesn't change, our minds already know, we've seen that, and we tend not to look at it.
Yeah, totally.
Like this kind of banner ads on websites. If we go to a website often, our eye knows where not to look, and we tend to just ignore them.
Yeah.
And so adding in some content that's changing every day helps mask the fact that maybe the internal department isn't updating that content that often.
Yep.
But if our content's changing throughout the day, every day, they think, hey, this screen's updated, and it catches their attention.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the other reason, whether it's our content or someone else's, there's like someone used the term once when we were having a conversation with them, it's a value exchange.
Yeah.
Like when you listen to the radio, if it was all ads, you would never listen to radio, right? Same thing with a magazine. So you got to give something to get viewership on your screen. That doesn't have to be entertainment. It could be, obviously, in an airport, the wait time for a security line or baggage claim information. That's value. You're giving them value to look on that screen. So that's an area where I've seen a lot of growth, I guess in the 15 years we've been doing this.
And I think you're right. Like, especially as you take your example, like an airport, that's information is critical. Like if I don't know when my plane's taking off, I miss my flight and everyone's miserable. And it's interesting to see corporate spaces starting to go, oh, actually, there's some things we could probably share with people that are pretty crucial. And we always see the same thing, especially with Flight Center, is they go, oh, once we set it up, the world started opening up. Like, what else could we display? And questions start coming in, and like, oh, could you display this or could you display that? So it's always, the advice I always is start small. Start with like, what would be successful? And you go, okay, if we have one full screen, we've had a couple of different customers that start with like 4 different zones at a time, and you're like, that's a lot of content, because you're not just making 4 pieces of content, you now have 4 channels of content that could have 12 assets, and suddenly you're looking at 48 pieces of content across all of those. Just start simple, basic, and that's where we have 12 screens at our head office. One of our screens is just dedicated showing Twitter using screen feed, because it's engaging, it's surrounded by other mediums that kind of offer some more insight. So we've got training and engaging content, product features and showcases, but then it's nice just in the middle of that just to go, and here's our social feed, which we don't need to worry about building out. It just pulls from other people's sources. So you were talking about kind of past experiences with the customers. Is there with ScreenFeed Connect's product, is there more questions that are coming up in terms of what data can they connect to and what makes it easier for them?
Yeah, you can share what's been popular with that.
Yeah. Some of it is really simple. So people want to just show a calendar.
Yeah.
And an Excel sheet or something like that. And really the beauty of it is what we're just discussing right now is the fact that it's going to be updating from that source. Even if it's a calendar, that might seem really simple, but they don't have to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
You make the design, you set it up with the calendar, and the calendar is just displaying. If you're making changes in Google or Outlook, it's displaying. So some of it's that. And some of it's more complicated API connections. So it's pulling from dashboard information of sales information or manufacturing metrics or transit information. Transit's been really popular as well. So it's been fun to let the customers guide that conversation a little bit. We just gave them a lot of, here you go, be creative, and then we help them with that if they need it. But
you guys offer both the kind of, here's the tool, go build it, and also a bit of kind of a little bit more assistance in terms of getting that up and running, right? Is that,
Right.
Do you feel like there is 2 different spectrums of capability, where one people go, I just don't want to touch content. I'm not
Yes.
creative. If last thing I did was macaroni, like when I was like year 3, are there just 2 different levels of people that you tend to end up communicating with?
mhm.
Yeah, it was interesting because in designing the product, really, ScreenFeed Connect is built for a person like me.
Yeah.
I'm a very do-it-yourselfer.
Mm-hmm.
I had renovated my house, 2 different houses. I always want to do things myself. Maybe way back something that got into digital signage is instead of buying someone else's CMS, I built my own. It failed miserably very quickly. But I'm a do-it-yourselfer and I'm impatient.
Yeah.
But I want to have capability. And so I wanted to do something. So one of the things I do outside of ScreenFeed is I run a girls fast pitch softball club. And we had information I wanted up on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
So some of the things where girls can submit a quick form and do a shout out for a teammate and say, hey, I loved how Maren was diving for balls yesterday and she really showed a lot of grit. And so then the next day someone can post that, they'll come to the training center and Maren will see your picture up there and what a teammate said about her. And that's so powerful for her to be able to see that message. There's other things we put up there like career leaders, so people see these goals they're going after, our schedule. And to be honest, even though I have a background in design, I don't want to spend all that time creating something. I have web developers that work for me, but to build that was going to take a long time.
Yeah.
With Connect, I was able to do that in a morning.
Yeah.
Like I set that stuff up in a morning, and it just gave me the power to get something done. Instead of kind of making it a large project, it's more of like, hey, I built this tool that allows me to just get that done. That said, even though I think it's super easy to get to your question,
Yeah.
some people don't even want to use a tool. They just want wonderful people to just
Yeah.
take care of things for them.
Uh-huh.
And that's like my wife. She loves to just have things taken care of.
Yeah.
Just tell me what to do, and then she knows I'm going to do whatever that is or something. So we found that. And so we've offered services where we take care of just building people's app. They just need to connect with Lorna, tell them what they want, and
Yeah.
then here you go. We end up giving them a URL that's an HTML5 feed that they can plug into Signage Live, and they're done.
Makes a lot of sense. And we've honestly, candidly been overjoyed with the development because I spend a lot of time talking about content with absolutely not part of the role of Signage Live at all. Like the whole concept is we need to take that conversation separately from hey, I'm going to start digital signage. We go, okay, what content are you going to run? Even though it's nothing to do with this, because that's got to be addressed first. Because if they don't know what they're doing with their content, they probably aren't ever going to succeed to the point where the screen's on the wall. Apart from those that already have the screens on the wall, and now it's a retroactive, what do we do with this? It's like it's a blank screen, and we've had, like a health message that sat there for 6 months, and no one looks at it
Right.
anymore. I think I've had some experience seeing individuals' content. Obviously, we're not going to name any names because that would get me in a lot of hot water. But I've seen some people take like a full screen PDF, like a PDF. Actually, I've seen someone take a scan of a sheet of paper, put that in a zone, so the landscape piece of paper, put that in a portrait zone, and then just went done. And this was not a small. This was like hundreds of screens. So there is still, I think, a big fear of going, if I do this development and I don't have the content and I don't have the knowledge, who do I go to? There's clearly like an individual out there who goes, I don't know who to turn to get this working. I mean, I would say start with small pieces. Start with minimal text, like not too much. You don't want to overflow the screen. It's like however you can condense that message to make it important. ChatGPT is a really good tool for that. Just saying, I did write a paragraph that's really important to me, but how do I just condense this into like 2 sentences to get the message across?
Yeah.
Ingest data. Stop people from having to go and update it once a week, once a day. Just go, what data sources do we already pull from that we can just go, well, it's already there. Why don't we just add it?
Right.
And honestly, social media, some of the things that were similar, just adding in some humanity, some context. Is your story there it's human emotion driven, which again, every episode seems to turn into talking about human emotion and how it drives that decision making. So those would be like kind of what I would say. It's like KISS, the like keep it simple, stupid. I got it wrong.
No, that's right.
It's just funny that stupid was in that phrase.
I knew
and
it
you
was
were
there. I
stumbling
was trying
through
to
it.
get to
That
stupid
doesn't
soon,
mean
and I was like,
anything.
I lost the meaning. But is there any other kind of advice that you would add on to that?
I'll add one I thought of as we were walking over here, which was the concept of minimum viable product. We tried to create that with Connect, and we ended up just keep adding more. Oh, well, we need this feature before we can launch it. But if you think of minimum viable message, what do I really need to say on that screen?
Yeah.
And the fewest words, excuse me, you can use to get that message across, the better. And I love having to boil down a message to, like you're saying, that paragraph
Yeah.
in ChatGPT to just a phrase.
Yeah.
I've always loved billboards for that fact because it's
Yeah.
a medium where you can't do that. And too often with the digital billboards, we go to DSE in Vegas often, and I'm always, there's this one that I see, and I can never read what the text is because
So John's
it's so
lawyers for you will
thin.
be good lawyers for you. We'll see you
Maybe,
tomorrow. And you're
yeah.
like,
It's so
video
thin,
gone?
I can't even see it, and so it's not effective.
Yeah.
If they just make it bigger, bolder, just get the point across. But keeping it simple, I enjoy that as a customer or viewer, and it also can make the production a little
Yeah.
easier. I don't know. What do you think, Lorna?
Yeah, something that I tend to gloss over, and maybe other people do as well. And our designer, our VP of Creative, Pete, does a great job of reminding us that it's important is to take your environment into consideration.
Yep.
So keeping it simple with the stuff that's on the screen, but like if you have a dark environment, maybe you do a lighter screen, or work with that contrast, work with the lighting. Like if I'm planning content with Pete working on a project, he'll say, and he's doing the designing, he'll say,
Yeah.
is there natural lighting come in? Are they viewing it from up here, or is it
Interesting.
eye level? And I don't know how much. I think some people consider it, especially if it's like a larger scale production or something like that. But I forget it sometimes too. So I think it's good to say that stuff really makes a difference
Yeah.
in what text size you're showing and how much text you're showing. And,
Yeah.
and so it's not just like dwell time and audience and the message that you're showing on the screen. It's also little things like that
Yeah.
that really help make a difference. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. No, absolutely.
Like a big part of screen feed is not just the end customer, but also our partners.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we don't exist without, we do exist a little bit without partners, but the fun thing about this industry is that we're all harmonious. So we get to come into spaces like this and have conversations about how we can benefit the end user or the end customer or the person doing the project, rather than just like fighting and saying, I'm better, you're better.
Yeah.
There's a little, well, we're content. So, I mean, you
Yeah.
might experience it more as a CMS group, but
Yeah.
it's a really cool place to be in.
Yeah.
So to be able to have this conversation, not just like what works best with content, but how do we work best with Signage Live, and I don't know what topics we could cover with that, but
Yeah.
it's just a neat.
Well, actually,
be a part of.
just on your journey, because obviously you've both come down to Barcelona, long old journey. But you don't have booth space, but you're just spending that time just going to see all of the partners and like everyone that you're familiar with. Is it just a
Right.
case of like, are you developing more relationships with them individually? Is it finding new partnerships? Because we're at ISE, I guess it'd be worth mentioning it. Although I don't want to date the episode too much to the point where it's like it's the ISE episode. But what's the driver for ISE?
Yeah,
Learning? Yeah, go ahead.
I'll start and you can finish. But yeah, one is there's not too often that you're in a space, at least in the digital signage zone here in Hall 6, that you're just getting to see how other people are marketing their products and what they're
Yeah.
having to say. And so when we have that opportunity, we always try to take that, whether it's ISE, DSC, Infocom, those are the shows we tend to hit. And it's often I'm bringing new employees and saying, hey, just listen to what people are saying, how they're describing the industry. And you may agree or disagree with their big marketing points, but it's good to understand, like, hey, what are our customers being told by other people? We're one part of the puzzle, and we're the content that hopefully gets you looking at a screen. But there's a lot that goes into that, including a CMS like Signage Live, media players, the screens, the mounts. And so it's good for us to have an understanding of the whole ecosystem and where we fall in that. And beyond that, just creating partnerships. So what would you say your goal is on the relationship end?
Yeah, definitely would reiterate the fact that we're just coming here to learn, to collaborate, and make relationships as well. Like there's definitely a side of it that's very valuable to us, but to hear what other people are doing or talking about, and to be at a show of this scale is like incredible. I mean, I've gone to shows in the States, and kind of a direction that we could take this conversation that we're having right now is, where is content going? And I say that because coming into the industry 4 years ago, and then there's lots of people that have been in this industry for like 15 plus years. And so everyone has a really solid understanding of where the industry started and where it's going and where content is doing and what some of the other players in the space are doing. And it's cool as not an outsider, but someone who came in like less than 5 years ago to watch that and learn about that. So I'm just learning something new every day.
Yeah.
So shows like this give me a good opportunity to hear that. And then that helps educate me as to having conversations with our customers, like, what can you do? You had a previous podcast episode where it was a fellow with Bright Sign, and he said, I think people use like 5% of the functionality that's available.
Totally.
So, I mean, to have the larger conversation of like, maybe where is content going, but also where's the industry going? Like, what are we going to do next? Like, if there's really 95% of functionality that's not being utilized, and maybe it's the same with content now that Connect is available, of what you can do with content. I mean, you've been able to do weather and news forever, and we've been a solid provider of that. But on top of that, now there's a lot more opportunity, I think, for people.
No, totally.
Yeah.
We actually just did like a top 5 review from our marketplace, which Joe, one of our content creators in the UK, did, and it's like no massive surprises there. It's like they use weather, they use clocks, they use news, because all of it needs absolutely zero interaction from a creative perspective. You just go, everyone needs to know what the time is, everyone needs to know what the weather is. They're like default wins, and you can just pop them in the corner. But future, like AI and things like that, Greenfeed had any kind of like nosing around there, whether you can or can't say it? Don't
I'm
say
happy
anything.
To, happy to share. Yeah, we have a particular developer, Reese. He's been kind of leading a bit of our charge, always asking for time to do some research, and so we did give him time last year. And then a really recent project we're going to be launching soon after this podcast episode launched, just relating to community events. And so this data source we have for local community events, like we'll have a large financial institution that wants to display community events on their screens in their bank to make them feel like they're part of the community, right?
Right.
And so we found a way to collect that information, but a lot of the descriptions were poor, just lacking. And so we're using AI to clean up those descriptions, and it
Cool.
rewrites them. And it's done a beautiful job. Also creates a category for us, just decides we give it a set of categories and it chooses which that it matches. And that all helps us deliver a content feed that they can trust.
Yeah.
And
Trust is a really interesting one around
Yeah.
AI and stuff like that, because it's like, do you just go, all right, here's the steering wheel, go off you go build your stuff, or you just want it as like a checker, like that kind of pilot that sits there and goes, well, why don't you just say
Right.
that, because it's a little bit nicer than what you've put.
Yeah, what's interesting is we're trusting, but so far. So, for example, what it does is actually it looks at it, and first of all, like the number of locations, there's no way we're going to be able to human
Yeah.
moderate it.
Mm-hmm.
So, you can trust it more using the AI or the one without the AI. You're gonna,
Yeah.
But with using the AI, we're trained it to rewrite a certain number of titles or descriptions, but those that it thinks might be a little suspect,
Yeah.
it kind of puts it in another bucket for us to review.
Like a little
So,
approval box.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it kind of kicks that out, and we can review that if we want. So it gives a human a very small set percentage of those to review, while the rest of them are off doing their thing.
Do you think though, so let's lead on to another question, but do you think though, if that is the case, and as AI develops like this, you can put like a disclaimer, there should be like a little logo that's built that just says, this was made by AI. So like, if there's something here that's a bit offensive or something like, whoops, there is never like, we could only send you this content to 1,700 different devices overnight because we used AI, and here's a little disclaimer to say that's the case.
Yeah.
I think that will
That's
come
interesting.
more, like people will just be more kind of appreciative of just being like, look, it messed up. It's going to do
Maybe.
it every now and then. Humans do too, right?
Yeah.
It's like when I walked over to the booth this morning, I looked over and just went, I've been looking at this logo and these stands for 5 months. And if there's a spelling mistake, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, you can change digital signage
Right.
content, which is another benefit. You can just go, whoops, well, let's go fix that. But if
Yeah.
you go up to a fabric material and you go, I've spelled crisps wrong, then
Right.
there's nothing you can do about it. And I just think
Right.
that AI will just become more of that, like, almost like watching a new hire start, like that level of like,
Yeah.
all right, well, and then there'll be the other side of it where people just laugh at it all the way through. There's going to be two sides to that coin completely. So that's
Yeah.
something that you're investigating right now.
Yeah, we expect to start using it within a month, though. So we've been testing it and feel pretty good about it. It's nice to see it solve a real world problem that
Yeah.
we have, and without it, I wouldn't feel as secure with the content that it's putting out. So we'll see what else comes. There's some other thoughts of us using it to determine what the most relevant content is at that moment.
Interesting.
So whether it's in a given, once we have a location, and you're talking about the difference of printed material versus digital.
Yeah.
And you want to take advantage of that. Like, what are the features? The fact is that we can change it and react to what's going on. And so how could AI decide, well, there's this imminent weather coming, so instead of showing the news, we're going to show weather. Or there is, we're in Barcelona, there's an FC Barcelona game tonight, so that's going to take the priority.
Yeah.
And so making those decisions on relevancy to the audience, that may be a role that AI could play.
Yeah, totally. No, I totally agree. I think that was that's fascinating. I really appreciate both of your time. Thank you for coming all the way to Barcelona to record an episode with me. I also travel, but I still can't get over this sort of studio setup. Everything from now on and going backwards is going to look awful in
Okay,
comparison to this. I'm going to need to go speak to the off-camera guy here to ask him some technical questions to figure out how I can build this in our office afterwards. But thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Where can they find you?
Lorna Campbell, I'm on LinkedIn, and Jeremy Gavin on LinkedIn as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. This has been another episode of Digital Signage Explored. Thank you very much for joining us here at a special for ISE 2024. Hopefully you'll join us again. We're trying to build a community of individuals that are just here to learn about digital signage for the first time, using industry expertise and thought leadership to make sure we make the most out of the digital signage platform and medium. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, Tim Baker on LinkedIn. You can find Signage Live on LinkedIn and at signagelive.com. Thank you very much again. We'll see you in another 2 weeks with another episode, and we'll speak to you soon.